Three. I'm Susan Branscombe. I am a recovered food addict and the host of this podcast, Food Addiction, the Problem and the Solution. On today's podcast, we have Jessica Parker, who is joining us as a guest. Welcome, Jessica.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Glad to have you here. You've got an interesting story, and look forward to telling our listeners about it. I'm going to introduce you, and then we'll open it up to some questions. Jessica Parker is a registered nurse and certified food addiction professional through the INFACT School, the owner of this podcast, who brings both professional expertise and personal experience to her work in addiction recovery. She is the founder of A Taste of Freedom, a coaching practice dedicated to helping individuals heal their relationship with food by addressing the physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual aspects of addiction. As an addiction recovery coach, Jessica specializes in working with individuals who are considering or have undergone bariatric surgery. Her passionate, whole-person approach supports clients in breaking free from food addiction and disordered eating patterns and finding lasting recovery without guilt, shame, or obsession around food. Jessica's work is deeply rooted in her own recovery journey, including experience as a bariatric surgery recipient. Her lived experience allows her to connect authentically with her clients, offering both hope and practical guidance. With a background in nursing and as a certified food addiction counselor through the INFACT School, she bridges science and empathy to guide others toward wellness. So thanks again, Jessica.
Thank you
for being here. Yeah, it's great to host you, and look forward to diving into some questions. We had a Zoom session a few weeks ago, and I got your story. I think it's fascinating. I'm going to start with this. Many of us, including me, are multi-addicted. We're not just addicted to one substance. We can be addicted to several. We can also have behavioral addictions like gambling, shopping, sex. But let's talk about your story. You have recovered from food addiction, but let's start with your other addiction, which was drug and alcohol use. You got clean and sober using, I believe 12-step programs in 2015. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The program that I was in was 12-step focused, but also faith-based.
Faith-based. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened before you got in? Like what happened, what happened that made you realize or others realize if there was an intervention that you needed to get some treatment for your drug abuse, alcohol abuse?
Sure. Well, in 2012, it became really apparent to me and the people around me that substance abuse was having some really negative effects on my life and my career, and my health. And so that spurred me, really some challenges at work spurred me to seek recovery. I lost the job that I had had for several years, and that was heartbreaking to me. And oddly enough, it wasn't clear to me how much of a problem I had until this happened. And so it was a blessing in disguise. So I went to a treatment program at that point for 30 days, and that was a state-run program, and still continued to struggle with drugs when I left there. And so in 2015, I was arrested for DUI, drugs, and at that point, the people around me started to put their foot down and say, we're not going to help you until you take the next steps. And so in my mind at that time, I felt, I don't want to say cornered, but I didn't know, I thought I had no option but to do what they asked me to do. And thank goodness, because at that point, everything really aligned to get me into that program. And I really believe there are plenty of programs out there, but I really believe that was the right one for me.
Right one for you. Who was urging you to go to rehab?
My mom and my aunt were really helpful in that.
Mm-hmm.
And they found just a interesting succession of events, got connected with the program in Cocoa Beach. And so that's where I went right away. and was admitted there, and I lived there on site for 13 months.
Yeah, 13 months. Yeah, rehab, and it was
Hmm.
faith-based, I understand. You said you got a DUI. It wasn't alcohol, but it was drugs?
Yeah, it was drugs, unfortunately.
Okay, so they did a field sobriety test, but and they could tell you were impaired?
Yeah, I actually passed out behind the wheel of the car at a stop sign.
Oh,
Yeah. And someone found me and called
wow.
911. And to this day, I don't know how they got in my car because everything locks, and it was kind of
Oh,
miraculous. And
yeah,
um, she called my mom, and my mom told her to call 911. And
yeah.
um,
What was your drug of choice?
opioids,
Opioids.
Dilaudid, or
Okay.
yeah.
How did you become addicted to those?
Well, it started as fun. I had a doctor ask me that one time when I was trying to achieve recovery on my own. He said, "What made you do this?" It was fun at first. I felt good, and it was relaxing and helped me feel. I know I never really felt like I fit in anywhere, even in my
Mhm.
childhood home. And so this helped me feel as though I was part of a group. I had friends. I um, felt important at times, and
Yeah,
um, so it just filled some needs, and then it wasn't fun anymore when I realized I couldn't stop and control it the way I
right,
wanted to.
right. Um, and so you were arrested and you went to jail, right?
Yeah, I sure did.
Did you
Hmm.
spend time in jail then?
Just a few days. That was
Okay.
enough.
That was enough.
Do not recommend.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They say there are one of the 3 L's that will get you into recovery: your liver, your lover, or the law.
Yes.
And it sounds like the law is what got you in there. And then your mom and aunt and others said, "Hey, you need to get help and we'll direct you here." 13 months is a long time to go to rehab. I mean, most people go 30, 60, 90 days. What was this like, 13 months in rehab?
Yeah, so they call it a regeneration program. And the goal is not only to help us to learn live, it really is to learn to live life clean and sober. And so I was exposed, I had tasks to do every day, chores, I had classes. Um, I was exposed to different things in the community. I volunteered a lot, and so
Okay.
the goal was to teach me how to do life again, free of substances, and so much in human, just the human condition. But our one of our biggest challenges is relationships, right? And so we have
Mhm.
relationships in there with the director, other students, or with the people that we come in contact with in the community, and so teaching us how to navigate relationships without the comfort of
Mhm.
substances was a big part of that.
Yeah, was there 12-step recovery involved?
They do. So a little different, not from one of the anonymous groups. They used a book called The Christian's Guide to the 12 Steps. But interestingly, um, I don't know, maybe halfway into my program, I got in trouble, and weren't quite sure what they were going to do with me. So part they started sending me to 12-step recovery groups,
Mm.
traditional 12-step recovery groups, and so that was helpful to me as well, and very encouraging. Part of this burden was that I was a professional, and
Mhm.
I was working as a nurse, and um, I didn't think I would ever work again. I didn't know what that would look like. And there are programs to help people get back into the nursing field, but they're really challenging and very expensive. And I wasn't sure what all that would look like for me. And when I went to my very first AA meeting, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you there were probably 12 nurses in there who had stories like mine and were
Yeah.
living in recovery and working if they
Yeah.
chose to. And it was
Yeah.
so encouraging to me that
Right.
I can I can move forward and I can be a light to other people. How many people suffer, professionals suffer because they think of what will happen to their careers if
Mhm.
they are honest. And
Right.
I'm a great example of my honesty helped me to keep my job. And I make good choices. There's situations I won't put myself in. I don't work at the bedside with access to narcotics. That's a decision I've made.
Okay.
But the beauty of nursing is that there are all types of jobs that we can do.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm able to keep my career and just do it a little differently.
Yeah. You say you got into trouble. What kind of trouble did you get in when you were in the rehab?
Oh gosh, there were a lot of rules, and I believe one of the things that came up was we had to walk on the beach every morning for exercise, but we had to do it with sneakers on, and I went. in my flip flops. I mean, it was they had very
Seems
strict
like a
rules, and
minor
so that
infraction, but you know,
it was pretty minor. But they were trying to teach us to follow rules and
follow
be
rules.
honest and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
And it probably wasn't the first time I was told.
Yeah.
So it is pretty little things that
Yeah.
get you caught up there, but there's a bigger picture. They would say to me there, if you can't be honest about this, how will you be honest in the future when you're
Hmm.
struggling? How will
Good
you ask
point.
for help if you can't ask for help with small things? And it is a good
Good
point.
point. I would think in 13 months that some point you started to feel pretty solid in your recovery, and you were probably helping people as they came in, right?
Yeah, actually, interestingly, the program was phasing out. I was the last person to be in that program. And so I didn't have a lot of others there with me.
So it sounds like drugs were a bigger issue for you from an addiction standpoint than alcohol. Is that right? Or did you use both?
I used both, but drugs were definitely my preferred substance. And interesting pattern I would see throughout my life is I would tend to use the substance that the person I was dating at the time used. And so there was a point where I dated someone who did not use drugs, but he was probably an alcoholic. And at that point, my alcohol use got out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. We get our drinking buddies and drug buddies that support our use, without any judgment is what happens. So,
Yes. Hmm.
yeah. So, 2015, you got clean and sober. You had family looking out for you. You had got arrested for DUI, went to jail, and spent 13 months in a rehab. And then when you got out, were you able to get back into the nursing profession?
I did right away.
Good.
Within a couple of months, I had found a job. But like I said, I've stayed in the office setting um, since that time.
Yeah, good. So let's transition to talk about a little about your childhood. We talked about your food use when you were a child and so forth. So let's kind of dive into that. And you said something that is pretty common among addicts and is that often we have trouble with relationships. Maybe they're adverse childhood experiences we've had. And so we feel like outsiders a lot.
Hmm.
And the thing about drugs and alcohol is that it makes us feel more like social. It takes down the
Yes.
barriers of feeling like an outsider. Like I'm like you, you're like me. We're having fun. That's what it did for me. And so, talk about your childhood experience. Was there trauma? Any negative experience that you had?
Yeah. So my family of origin was just myself, my brother, and my mom and dad. And my dad left when I was around 9 years old, and my mom quickly remarried a gentleman with five daughters. And
Mm,
so they moved into our home very, very quickly. All this happened within months. So my whole life changed, and that experience with my dad leaving was a lengthy process, and so there was just a lot that went on with that. Um, and so learning how to cope with that, and my mom got five new daughters at one time, and so when I tell the story to people, I feel like I lost both parents at once.
yeah.
My mother was there, but she was focused on now raising seven kids, going to college, um, and providing love to five little girls who didn't have a mom. And
And
so,
how old
in
were
my
you at that
perspective,
time? You were 9.
I was 9.
And these 5 girls were younger than you?
Four were younger, one was a year older.
Okay. And you had another sibling then, too.
And my little brother, he was the baby of all of us. So six girls and one boy.
Okay. Interesting. That is pretty traumatic. You're going
Yeah.
along, dad leaves, she remarries. All of a sudden, you've got 5 new stepsisters that your mom's focused on, right?
Yeah.
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 Wow,
And so
that's
it,
big.
it kind of continued the pattern. When I was very young, I don't have a lot of memories of being very young, but I remember the feeling. I remember feeling fearful, and I remember feeling like anger was a huge part of the atmosphere in our household. Um, and then fast forward to my new family, and I feel like I didn't really fit in there either. The five sisters had a really incredible bond, and I had my brother, but he was 6 years younger. He was four, so it's a
Yeah.
little different. It wasn't
Yeah.
my buddy.
So
And
you
so
were an
I feel
outsider
like,
with your stepsisters. Yeah, I can see
mhm,
how that would work. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so all of that led to me, it made making connections hard. Um, and in, when I started to discover drugs and alcohol, I was also raised in a very religious home, very, very controlling in with the way we were brought up. And so it was almost like at some point when I was exposed to the outside world and substances in my 20s, and the friends and the fun that came with that, it all seemed to, I don't know, accelerate very, very quickly.
Hmm. Tell me about the anger. Was this something you were aware of when you were that age, that you were angry, and that did you have the freedom to express it in your household?
No, well, I don't really remember. And I don't know that I recognized that I was angry. I had an angry dad, I thought, and then an angry mom as well, as her attempt to respond to that and prevent that anger.
Mm.
His anger, then she was angry. Um, and so I don't know what my feelings were then, but I know expressing anger and recognizing it in myself is something I still work on now,
Yeah.
to really learn to be honest with myself about
Right.
if I'm angry with someone, and then is it appropriate for me to say so? And
Right.
I sometimes will tell a group of women who support me about something that occurred, and they would say, that's not inappropriate. But it's so foreign to me to express that emotion that I feel as if I'm mean and horrible. And when other people give me feedback, that's not what they see. But it's so uncomfortable for me. So it's something I still work on to this
Yeah.
day.
So you're telling people
Is it
how
okay
you
to be angry?
express anger or set boundaries, and they're saying that's not inappropriate, but you're feeling like
Mm-mm.
it might be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. So, you said you had other feelings. You said anger, and there was another feeling you had that you had back then.
Oh, I don't remember what I said. But
Did you feel
I feel like,
abandonment with your father
oh,
leaving?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
did you
I'm very
see him again?
confused. I did, but it was rocky for years.
Mhm.
So in my little kid brain, he moved to another family. He had a new woman and a child who was my age. She looked like me, and in my mind, and then the way that things rolled out, she even was given some of my belongings because we were supposed to be moving there with him, and that didn't happen. But in my child brain, I interpreted that as he picked her because she was thinner and prettier. And so I couldn't understand why you'd leave one family for one that matches it. There must be a reason. And in my kid brain, that was the story I told myself. And then, in my dad's journey, um, we have a good relationship now,
Mm,
but in those first years, it was not good, and he was not able to be available to us
yeah.
the way that we would have needed. And
Mhm.
so,
Have you been through therapy about some of this stuff happening in your childhood?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh
thought so.
yes,
I can tell.
for many years,
I can
many
I
years,
think I can
and
hear it in there. Uh,
yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, boy, that's big. That's big stuff. And often, it's not, it's kind of like the kids are adaptable. They'll get over it. Here's what we're doing. And you're just lucky to have a roof over your head kind of thing. When you're
Hmm.
like, what the heck? My dad's
Yeah.
gone. I've got these new sisters that don't include me. I mean, that's pretty big. Did you were you using food before all this happened? Did you use it when that started? Have you identified that?
I haven't identified that. I know that food addiction, we didn't call it that, but I have many family members who were morbidly obese, five,
Hmm.
600 pounds. That was not
Yeah,
uncommon to see food abused. And that's also how we showed love in
yeah,
my family. Grandma cooked for us, always something special.
yeah.
And then, like, I have a vivid memory of being snuck in her room. She took care of me during the day when my mom worked, and we'd sneak in there, and she had chocolate jelly rings in the nightstand, and that is a memory that I have
Hmm.
clearly, that she did this special thing with me. Um, and my mom wanted desperately to protect me from that. She did not want me to have the same struggle with food, although at the time she didn't recognize it as addiction, but she saw this pattern in her family and herself and wanted to protect me from that. So she would try to control food, and my dad was controlling around food too. It
Hmm.
was, I don't have a lot of memories about this, but I've heard that it was a challenge for him that I was chubby kid and things
Yeah.
like that. He didn't like that.
Challenge
And so,
just because it sounds like he had another daughter that was thin, not chubby, and so you were using food. It sounds like you snuck it. You had family members that said, "Hey, come in here. I've got,"
hmm
and we do. We
yeah,
show, my mother showed love through food, and it's just part of our society too. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then I remember after my mom remarried, we broke down some of the um, restrictions around food, which the restrictions probably didn't come down, but she was too busy to notice. And so things started to happen in my household because their dad looked at things very different. And
Mm,
if the kid wants two sandwiches, you give him two sandwiches. He
right.
came from a very poor background, and so you provide food when you can.
Right.
And so I know at that point, I have a clear picture of that is when I started to um, use food uh, more regularly as comfort and in higher quantities and more sneaking. In the time I thought, well, I'm just one of seven. If you only buy eight boxes of Pop Tarts a week, if I'm going to get one, I better take it and put it in my room right away. Um, but I realize now that's not probably a normal way to think about things. But it was, I don't know, part of my survival tactic at that time.
Yeah.
So I remember some sneaking um,
Sneaking
when I
food.
couldn't be monitored as
Yeah.
closely.
So, how old were you when you realized that you might be heavier than other kids, or you felt self conscious about your size?
A little bit probably in high school, although I'm also very tall. I was almost 6 feet tall. And so I still don't think, when I look back at pictures, I start to see, oh, yeah, I was heavier than the people around me. But I don't recall having a lot of awareness about
Okay.
that when I
Hmm.
was younger. It wasn't a
Okay.
concern of mine,
Hmm.
really. Um, and because, like, the way that we dressed and the way we were taught in church, I dressed very modest. We didn't come up in a household where you accentuated any body parts and everything was kind
Yeah.
of hidden. So I always dressed in a way that kind of covered me up. And so I don't recall being very aware
Hmm.
of how much different my body size was in
Hmm.
comparison to other people's. Like I knew I was heavy, but I never really thought about it being
Hmm.
out of control.
Yeah. How much extra weight do you think you might have been carrying during high school?
I don't know, but I think I was probably nearing 200 pounds by the end.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just by some memories of some conversations I had. I
Hmm.
think that might have been.
So, you didn't get any negative reactions from other girls or boys in high school?
One time on the school bus that I remember clearly, and his critique, I didn't even really understand what it meant at the time. Um, but I wasn't teased or bullied or anything of that nature.
Mhm. What did he say?
He called me fat back, and I didn't know that that was a reference to. I didn't realize what it might have meant to me personally. I didn't know if there was a reference to a piece of meat, a pig. I didn't
Yeah.
get that, but um, it was just a one-time thing, and it never happened again. So
Hmm. All right. Yeah, but you remember it. I had some
yeah, yeah.
experiences like that. Yeah.
hmm
Um, so take me through the way you used food um, in your teenage years, adult years, kind of in reference. I know you had an obesity problem, so we want to get to that. So, what were your food behaviors? And then what age were you during that time?
So really, once I moved out on my own, I had freedom. So the food behavior there was fast food and things like that, things that normally weren't kept in our home where I grew up. And so once I had a job and I moved out, I could do things like restaurants and fast food. And honestly, for a period of time, I was still heavy, but I feel like my substance abuse kept that under control for some time. And so I
Yeah.
wasn't binging and having some of those behaviors because I was using a whole nother substance that made me not want food.
Right.
And as you know, I wonder even if that was an encouragement to me to keep using, because finally this is under control a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
not obsessed with food.
Right.
But then when I got clean and sober, um, I, like I said, I quickly went back to old behaviors, quickly noticed binge eating behaviors, hiding it because I lived with thin people. I didn't want them to know how much I was eating. Um, you know, different things like that. And I even like taking food that wasn't mine would be something that I would do.
Hmm.
And I don't know why I thought that was acceptable, but it was definitely a
Stealing
behavior.
food,
Yeah,
that's pretty common among food
yeah,
addicts is their
yeah.
patterns, their history.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Um,
for me, when I started to explore the idea of food as an addiction, my mom had been to a 12-step group for food addiction when she was young, and it worked for her. She eliminated food and I'm sorry, sugar and white flour,
mhm.
and became very, very thin and maintained that for a long time. And so I had heard about this in the past, but for me, I saw the same exact patterns with food as I saw with alcohol or
Mhm.
drugs, with the lying, the sneaking, that I don't know how my car showed up here at the liquor store. Same thing
Right.
would happen with the restaurant. I would have to plan my route home in such a way that I wouldn't pass certain places,
Right.
or I didn't think I could not stop.
Mhm.
Um, Lying and sneaking, all of
Mhm.
those things, to me, it was very obvious because of the substance abuse past. Wait, I'm acting the same exact way, putting something in your purse so you'd have it right after work.
Right.
All of that.
Yeah.
It was the same patterns for both
Yeah.
things. And so it was when I first met with my food addiction counselor. She said, "Are you open to the idea of food being addiction?" Yes. There was no question in my mind. Oh, yes.
Because you were behaving differently. I mean, we know in the studies and the folks we've interviewed that alcohol changes the brain, changes the reaction to the brain, dopamine receptors. Same with sugar and certain
Hmm.
trigger foods, ultra processed foods. It changes the brain, and then we want more, and then we start obsessing about it, starting planning ways to get it. And like you say, you can almost be. I used to dissociate. Like I couldn't even believe that I was eating all these Kit Kat bars or eating a burger in a parking lot so nobody would see me,
Yeah.
and I dissociated from it, because I didn't want to
Hmm.
believe that I was doing that. And those are the
Sure.
kind of things we do. And that's when you've got an addiction, cravings, withdrawal, it's all there.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you start using food in the same way that you did drugs and alcohol, and um, your weight got up. I've got somewhere between 360 and 400 pounds. Is that right?
Yeah, around 360 was my highest.
360.
Hmm.
Yeah. Did you try diets? Were you successful in losing weight in diets?
For short periods of time, yes. I
Yeah.
tried all types of things, diets, pills, s- diets with support groups.
Yeah.
And in my whole life, once I had heard about bariatric surgery, I was curious about it, but never had an insurance plan that would cover it and couldn't afford something like that. But I feel like I experimented with every new pill that came out,
Hmm.
and just like anything else, while you do it, or at least for the first few months, it works really well, and then the old behaviors come back in. You learn how to kind of get around it.
Yeah.
Well, well, this makes me not hungry, but I can eat these things, and they don't bother me, so I can
Right.
binge on different foods, and
Right.
I'm crafty, just like I am with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
My brain is just as crafty when it comes to food.
Right.
It's
Give me an inch,
incredible.
I'll take a mile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you aware of using food to relieve emotional discomfort, fatigue, irritation, sadness? Were you aware that you maybe weren't tapping into your feelings and using food to assuage the feelings?
I don't think so, really. I don't know that I put that together, or maybe I didn't want to see it until I went to the INFACT School. I think at
Okay.
that point it started to become more clear to me.
Hmm.
Maybe in the work I did with the counselor before that, um, but it didn't really connect for me. And
Hmm.
the one pattern that was the hardest for me to break is after work wanting to eat. Like I would do great all day long, follow, eat what I
Yeah.
packed and no problem. But then after work, and that was the big one. Like this is just like when I would drink.
Yeah.
I after work I need relief, and that's when it started to click for me that oh, there's a relationship to how I'm feeling physically
Mhm.
or emotionally and physically. Um, and I'm exhausted by the end of the day, and my strength to even continue doing what I know is right is diminished as well. And so it was quite a few different factors, but that's when I started to realize this is totally tied to my emotions.
Yeah, yeah, and your counselor is saying, "Are you open to considering that this might be a food addiction?" And you're like, "Yeah, I see it." So talk about where you got. You're 360 pounds, and you're desperate to do something about this, and that's where the procedures you had come in. I have in my notes that you had a sleeve put in 2019 and then a bypass in 2023. So talk about the desperation leading you to those procedures.
Yeah. So in 2019, I made the move toward the gastric sleeve, and honestly, my company p- p- pays for that. The insurance covers it, which is the first time I experienced it. So everyone around me was doing it. They were having really great results. I had been curious about it for many years, and so, but I was at a point where I couldn't. I felt like out of control. I couldn't. There was no diet that was going to help me. Um, I would hear people talk about freedom from food, and I really believed it couldn't happen for me. That was the thing. It wasn't that it. I'm sure it was real for them, but I didn't think could be real for me.
Mhm.
I don't know if I felt too far gone. I really felt like it was a willpower thing too. I'm too weak. I've tried. I've tried all the things. I'm not
Yeah,
successful at any of them. It's because
right.
I'm weak and I'm deficient. Um, but here's this opportunity to get this surgery, which will be a good tool. And I knew it wasn't the answer. And I even I talked to the surgeon about that and said, he would say, well, you won't be able to eat. You won't be hungry. Your hormones change. I don't eat because I'm hungry. So how's this going to help me? I had pretty honest conversations with him,
Yeah.
but those conversations didn't stop him from allowing me to have this surgery. Um, and that's why I feel so passionate about talking to people who are considering the surgery,
Mhm.
not to talk them out of it, but some of the conversations that I tried to have with my doctor, I would have loved someone to have them with me and say,
Right.
I think if I could find abstinence before that surgery, maybe things would have been a little different for me.
Yeah.
And what I did with that surgery, in preparation for the surgery, there is um, there are a lot of rules. You have to do things to be safe for the surgery. You have to lose weight. You have to go on a liquid diet for several weeks. There's a
Mm.
lot to do in preparation, um, and it's uncomfortable, but I did it all, and and I got this false hope that oh, I can do this. This is going to be successful. And again, the people around me, most of them lost a lot of weight, um, and fast forward, I had the procedure. The tool was doing what it was supposed to do, right? Cause restriction. I couldn't eat that much, but I learned they call it eating around the bypass or the surgery.
Right.
You learn that okay, when I eat chicken or vegetables, I get full really fast and I get uncomfortable. But I don't feel that way if I eat carbs. And the next thing you know, you're overeating on carbs, which is something you weren't going to eat, right? We all tell ourselves, I told myself, I'm not going to go back to this after. And I did. I saw the person next to me have their first chocolate and they didn't get sick. So maybe I'll try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and then I found out that I didn't get sick. So that just opened the door to returning to the old patterns of food. And no, I couldn't eat the volumes of food I had before, but I could eat all day. I could graze all day.
Yeah.
And probably that's one of the challenges with bariatric surgery is that and food addiction. You have to eat several times a day to get the nutrients that you need.
Right.
But that opens the door for grazing all day as
Right.
well if you're not really
Sure.
careful.
So you had the sleeve in 2019, and then I think you had a complication from it, as I remember.
I did.
And then you did the bypass in 2023. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the complication I experienced not long after having the surgery is called laryngopharyngeal reflux. And essentially, was going into my airway, into my larynx. and caused the sensation of a lump in my throat. And um, we did lots of testing to try to figure out what was happening. Because interestingly, I did not have the feeling of heartburn. There was no discomfort for me. And it was determined that I had this diagnosis. LPR is another word for it.
Hmm.
And um, the only fix for that is to convert your surgery to gastric bypass.
Mm.
So I
Okay.
tried to put that off for some time, and during that time is when I tried to pursue or when I did pursue the food addiction counseling, because
Okay.
I was hopeful that if I could get my diet under control, that I would not need the surgery. That was the goal. But wasn't my experience, unfortunately.
Yeah. So did you lose weight after the sleeve?
I did. I lost about 100 pounds,
Okay.
but then I became pregnant and gained a lot of that weight back.
Okay.
Um, and so when I delivered my son, I was over 300 again,
Okay.
and um, didn't want to be there and really struggled. I fell for a lot of the things they teach you about breastfeeding and producing milk. You need to up your calories. And so
Yeah.
I did that, which
Yeah.
was probably unwise,
Yeah.
because it got me back into patterns of eating foods I wouldn't have eaten before, and
Hmm.
excusing that behavior. I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this for my baby. I need to do this.
Right.
When in
All
hindsight,
reasons that just excuses really to go to your
yeah,
addiction. So the 2019, after that, and before the bypass, you got pregnant with your son.
I
Okay.
did.
So 2023, I know, is when you went to INFACT School, and
Yes.
um, so did you have the bypass before you went to INFACT?
While I was in INFACT
While
school.
you were in
Hmm.
INFACT? Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yep. So I
right.
was working.
How heavy were you when you started at the school with the program?
I was still over 300 pounds at that point.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Well, you've come a long way. You look like you're at maintenance weight.
yeah, I still have weight to lose, but I feel so much better. You talked earlier about the desperation you feel, and I don't think I realized, because I lived so much of my life heavy, how much I couldn't do
Mm,
before.
yeah.
And now I can. And I even think maybe even having my son would not have been a possibility, because hormones were so out of whack
Right.
when I was heavier. But even things at being active and being able to be on the floor with him, and traveling, wearing a seatbelt on an
Right.
airplane without a problem, like all of those things feel really, really good. Um, and, you know, part of the desperation beforehand, before surgery, before abstinence, was not being able to do all those things.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a lot we can't do, and we just kind of excuse, like, well, I can't walk without getting out of breath. I hurt, and
Yeah.
it's hard. But
Mhm.
I'd asked you the question, did you regret having the procedures? And you said no, because you were able to have a son. You needed to regulate
Yeah.
your weight and hormones and so forth so you could have your son. So I thought that was interesting
Yeah. Yeah. I wish it could have been different, but I am grateful. You
for
know,
him. Right.
I had, yeah, and I had him right. I was 39, and so I was like, it was time if I was
TikTok.
going to do it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so
Right.
I'm glad for that I didn't delay. I'm glad, I'm grateful. Um, but
Yeah.
I wish I could have found abstinence before and done
Before.
it that way. Hmm.
Well, let's talk about recovery. Sounds like your recovery, you're delving into abstinence, which is being sober around food, removing problematic foods, addictive foods like sugar and flour for some people, um, was something you did, but it coincided with your attendance at INFACT School. So talk about that. You entered INFACT School. We talk about the solution in this, and you and I think can agree that it's not surgery, it's not Ozempic, it's not GLP. If you can get abstinent and work some kind of supportive program to stay abstinent, you will lose weight if that's your issue, or you will have the mental chatter about food taken out of your whole being. So talk about that.
Yeah. So at the INFACT School, I learned about INFACT School through my own research because I was working with that counselor, and I thought, let me research how she got this, certification. And so I brought it to her and I said, hey, I found these two schools, and she said, oh, INFACT is where I went. I think it would really help you in your recovery and your future goals. And so that's how I met Esther. And so when I went into school, I don't think I realized that we'd be in treatment as part of school and learning, like practicing what we're going to
Yeah.
teach people to do. But it was such a blessing. I had done the 12 steps, and part of my frustration with recovery is how can I say I'm recovering? How can I say I'm a recovering person if I'm still addicted to something else? It never really, I could never answer that question.
Right.
Um, but I and so I had done 12 steps before. I worked with sponsors. I was not sure how this would be different, but it was different. It was different in so many ways. The beauty of the program is that we are all in treatment together. And so I got to learn from other people's stories and experiences and struggles. Not everybody was abstinent when they arrived there. And
Hmm.
so we got to see them work through that. And that was such a blessing. It helped me realize I'm not alone. When people were honest about what they really experienced, it really helped me to see, oh my goodness, they're just like me. And I'm not a lost cause. And it helped encourage me, like I said earlier, that this can't happen for me. When I kept seeing week after week after week how it was happening for people, that helped me believe
Hmm.
it could happen for me. And then we worked with 12 steps as part of our program.
Yeah.
And some of that was done with other students, and some was done on one-on-one sessions with Esther.
Hmm.
And what really I think was pivotal for me is we talked about shame a lot. And this is the part that stood out to me anyway. When we talked about 12 steps and the impact some life experiences have on us and why we kind of get stuck in addiction, it had to do with shame. And I really started to do some work on recognizing shame in my life, and sharing it with another person and learning how to work through some of that. And recognizing it, you might think that's fairly simple, but it wasn't. There
No.
were
Yeah.
things are still come up now that I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, I reacted that way because, or I'm struggling with this still because there's shame attached to it. And then I
Mm.
go into, you know, exploring how did I react? Why did I react that way? And that's where I'm finding freedom from those things that
Yeah.
still
Where?
can snag you from now.
Yeah. Give me an example of the shame. What were the specifics about shame?
Yeah, so one thing that is fairly recent, and I love sharing the story because it was so simple but so impactful. In my 20s, I lied to my boss about something. My friend's husband was in an accident and he died, and I wanted to leave work and be with her. And I didn't tell her the truth about who the person was in the accident. And um, you know, 20 something years later, this still bothers me. And now where I live now, I recently moved back to the town I grew up in, and I have to pass the area where that accident occurred. And every day when I would pass, I would feel physically sick. Not that Chris died there, but because I lied to my boss there and it sounds simple, but it tore me apart. Like, why did I lie to this woman? And as I started tying some of this work, like, why does this impact me so much? It was one little lie to a boss 25 years ago. And I started to realize I'm ashamed of my behavior. She'd caught me, first of all. So there's that.
Oh, she
But
caught you in it.
also,
Okay.
she was a woman who mentored me for years. I'm pretty sure if I told her the truth, the outcome would have been the same. She'd say, go be with your friend, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I just felt really ashamed that I blatantly lied like that. And as I worked through that and recognized the shame, number one, and number two, in the big book, it talks about, um, when we're dealing with, sometimes being the victim of someone else's behaviors, Mr. Brown is a sick man too, right? And I looked at myself that way. It was the best I could do at the time.
Hmm.
It's not a behavior I was proud of, but I was a sick man, and that behavior was the best thing I could do at the time. And when I started to recognize that and forgive myself for
Hmm.
that behavior, I felt free. And so now when I drive past that spot, I remember Chris, who died in that accident, but I don't
You don't feel the
have that
shame.
shame
Yeah.
of my behavior.
Yeah, that's a good story. And it could be sometimes it can be really subtle things, but it's sort of a feeling you get, where it's like,
Mm,
oh, I'm just so ashamed that I did that, and This is the stuff that comes up after we put down our drug of choice, food of choice, because we start facing
Mm,
ourselves. And it sounds like you had the courage to face yourself. In fact, as a student, but then you were also sort of in recovery there too.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, tell me about your typical day of abstinence and working a program. I mean, I guess your weight loss probably started then when you were in INFACT school. Did you get
It
abstinent? What
did.
Tell me about the journey.
I did get abstinent. So I had the beauty of getting abstinent before I had the bypass surgery, which set me up for a much better experience after
Yeah,
surgery, right? Because otherwise my pattern, my experience would have been the same. I
yeah.
would have learned, to
Somehow to
eat
get food in. Yeah,
disordered
yeah.
again. So I felt like I was really in a good place. I had no choice. I had to have the surgery. There was complication, but I felt like I was going into it a healthier person physically and mentally and emotionally. I had the support of the instructor there and my classmates there who knew what was happening with me. And so it wasn't ideal. It's not what we teach in food addiction training at all. And Esther will share with you, like, this was new for her. She had never worked with someone
Yeah,
with this
interesting.
before.
Yeah.
And so it was an opportunity for all of us to learn. Um, but it was a great way to start the journey, and and I stay connected with those people now and with her as well, which helps me. Um and then I think, we talk about you keep what you have by giving it away. And so now the work that I do with my the clients that work with me, it fills my cup so much to be
Yeah.
able to support other women
Yeah.
who are going through something similar. And I also, as part of my recovery, I have some mentors from my program that I went to for the year, for the 13 months,
Mhm.
that I stay connected with. And so that's a big part of my recovery. And I do have spiritual practices that I practice daily
Mhm.
that help me stay strong, and a faith. I had lost that because I had mentioned briefly that I was in a very strict religious upbringing.
Mhm. Right.
There came a point in that where I totally separated. I want nothing to do with any religion at
Right.
all. And so when I learned that the 13-month program was faith based, I put the armor on immediately. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I'll go there because it's free, but I'm not,
Yeah.
and it wasn't free, but it was cheaper than inpatient,
Right.
But um, but the spiritual connection, I feel like part of when I say that that was just the right program for me, they allowed my higher power to do that work
Yeah.
their own way.
Mhm.
I was not pushed to believe anything, to do anything, to practice anything. I was given suggestions and ideas and allowed to explore what felt right for me. And it
Mhm.
was a journey. When I went there, like, some people view God in Christian faith, view God as Father. I
Mhm.
wasn't doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And there was a very
Right.
popular song saying you're a good father. I wasn't comfortable going there. But what developed over time, I felt like, was a friendship. That was how I was able
Yeah.
to enter into it.
Mhm.
And since then, my faith beliefs have changed and grown and
Yeah.
become very personal to me. And I don't know that it looks just like anyone else's,
Mhm.
but it is a place where I feel comfort. I feel like I always belong.
Right.
I feel hope.
Yeah.
Um, Everything is possible
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And
Everything
I
is
mean,
possible.
life is
Yeah.
still
No, I
hard, but
totally get it. Yeah. The spiritual
yeah,
part of this is whatever your idea of God is or universal spirit, in my recovery and others that I know and on this podcast, you've got to have something that you can go to. And I've said it
hmm,
before when I'm in meditation, when I do meditation, I know I'm not alone. That's how I
yes,
know there's a God because
yes,
God is with me. So,
hmm,
not to proselytize, but yeah,
yeah,
the 12-step recovery, of course, has spiritual aspects. Not all recovery programs do, but
right,
it's an important part of my recovery, and it sounds like yours too.
yeah,
So, yeah, you got into the INFACT school, and we all have journeys, paths that we experience to get us to a place of abstinence, peace, not fighting this anymore, recognizing the powerlessness that often we can't stop from starting. We can't stop once we start.
yes,
And you've been through drug addiction recovery, 2 surgeries, diets, and now you're abstinent. And what would you say about how this whole thing works to someone out there listening?
Oh, it's a miracle. And I think, just approaching, if you have a little light inside of you, if you can cling on to any little bit of hope in someone else's story, even,
Yeah,
if recovery happens for someone else, there's no reason it can't happen for you. And
yeah,
I often say to people, if you're alive, there's still hope. Even
yeah,
when it feels, with substance abuse too, but with everything, if you're still alive, there's still hope that it can be different for you.
yeah.
And I think there's a period where we have to lean on someone else's hope
Hmm.
and faith for a while, and experience, and that's okay. And it's normal. You don't have to have it. We're so trained to be independent, especially as
Yeah,
women, right? Like,
right.
take care of yourself, make enough money. You don't need a man. Well, what I learned in my recovery program, the big takeaway for me is I need people. I'm not meant to do it alone. I'm
Right.
not meant to do any of this alone. Connection is the most valuable thing, and I carry that with me. My ability to connect with people is so valuable to me. And and in early recovery, when we're considering recovery, that connection is vital.
Yeah,
And we can't do it alone, and we don't need to do it alone. And there
right,
are people who have done it with us before us who can
right,
help us along the way.
right. Big part of my recovery is, yeah, exactly what you're saying is having fellows in a program, having meetings and support, just knowing I'm not alone in this. You specialize in people. Your practice that you're building is one where you specialize in people who have had surgery or considering surgery, gastric bypass, sleeve, whatever, because you've been there and you feel like you can offer some hope. You've got the certification. So, talk about that as we close out.
Yeah, so I do work with clients who have not had surgery and are not considering surgery, but I do feel passionate about those who are. And I think from my own experience and what I experience at INFACT, it's a beautiful thing when someone can start to explore food addiction before surgery. And so my
Hmm.
goal when I work with clients is never to talk them out of it. That's not what I'm here to do. My goal is to help you be most prepared when you're ready to make those decisions,
Yeah.
so that if you do have surgery, you are prepared for the post-op period. And there's a lot of things that we teach in food addiction recovery, um, that preparation for bariatric surgery goes against. We laxative use and really, really strict diets, and you're hungry all the time. And so we don't encourage that in food addiction recovery, right? So having someone walk through that with you is helpful.
Yeah.
Um, and but in addition to that, I have clients who come to me after surgery that have started to regain weight, or even some that haven't really gained much weight, but the food noise in their head, they feel like they're controlling it, but they're struggling. They're
Yeah.
having that constant battle in their mind around food, the same way they did when they could eat large
Yeah.
amounts of food.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like I said, I feel passionate about that population, but
Yeah.
all my clients aren't considering bariatric surgery.
Yeah. Good. Good to know. Yeah, we have a signature question at the end. This has been great, Jessica. Thank you for being so vulnerable and honest, and you've got a great story. Before I ask this question, how can people reach you?
Oh, my email is jparker.atof@gmail.com. And I'm also available on Facebook at A Taste of Freedom, or Instagram at A Taste of Freedom.coaching.
Okay. All right. We'll make sure we get that in the notes. Um,
Great, thanks.
okay. Great. Yeah. What final question? We have a sort of a signature question. What would you say to someone who is out there listening, weighs 350 to 400 pounds, scheduled for gastric bypass, has tried everything, diets failed, so frustrated. Everybody's telling her or him that it's your fault, that you can't do this, just eat less, exercise more, or who's on Ozempic or another GLP drug. What would you say to the person that might be listening?
Oh, it's not your fault. It's bigger than you. There's science behind it.
Yes.
Um, but there's hope. This doesn't have to take over your life. doesn't have to be your cause of death. It doesn't have to be
Mm.
a frustration. It doesn't have to take over your mind forever. There's freedom in our minds where we can have peace surrounding our food, surrounding our past,
Mm.
and that there are people who have done it, who live this life, and who are would love to share experience with you,
Yeah.
um, to help you find the same freedom and peace.
Yeah. It's great that you've done it when your little boy is, young,
Yes,
and you can hike with them, get on roller coasters and all that kinda
yes,
thing. Yeah, it's
yep,
really cool to do. It's grandchildren with me, but yeah,
yeah,
it's a different way to live, and once you realize that it may not be your fault, but if you wanna live a different way, it's your responsibility to make some
yes,
changes, and then you get to work, you
mhm,
get abstinent and take the stuff out of your food plan, get a good food plan. I weigh and measure everything, my
mhm,
food, and, takes the chatter out of my head, and I am free, you
yes,
know? I'm free of, resentments and fears and all of that stuff too, shame, so it's a beautiful life, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me today, Jessica Parker, and I'll make sure you get your contact information in the notes, and it's been wonderful to host you today. I know Esther will be happy.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was great.
Yeah, it really was. Thank you.